The gospel lesson for today is from Luke's Gospel of 15th chapter. One of the most popular, one of the greatest, and also one of the most meaningful stories in Scripture. Now the tax collectors and sinners were coming near to listen to Jesus, and the Pharisees and the scribes were grumbling and saying, "This fellow welcomes sinners and eats with them." And so Jesus told them this parable. There was a young man who had 2 sons. The younger of them said to his father, "Father, give me the share of the property that will belong to me." And so he divided his property between them. A few days later, the younger son gathered all he had and traveled to a distant country, and there he squandered his property in dissolute living. When he had spent everything, a severe famine took place throughout that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent them into his fields to feed the pigs. He would gladly have filled himself with the pods that the pigs were eating, and no one gave him anything. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired hands have bread enough and to spare, but here I am dying of hunger. I will get up and go to my father, and I will say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me like one of your hired hands.' And so he went off to his father. But while he was still far off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion. He ran and put his arms around him and kissed him. And then the son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his slaves, 'Quickly bring out a robe, the best one, and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. And get the fatted calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found.' And they began to celebrate. Now his elder son was in the field, and when he came and approached the house, he heard music and dancing. He called one of the slaves and asked, 'What's going on?' He replied, 'Your brother has come, and your father has killed the fatted calf because he's got him back safe and sound.' Then the elder son became angry and refused to go in. His father came out and began to plead with him. But he answered his father, 'Listen, for all these years I've been working like a slave for you, and I have never disobeyed your command, yet you have never given me even a young goat so that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came back, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fatted calf for him.' And then the father said to him, 'Son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. But we had to celebrate and rejoice because this brother of yours was dead and has come to life. He was lost and has been found.'" Here ends the reading. You may remain. On Friday and Saturday, I was down in Quincy at a fancy hotel with Susan for a dance competition. This is a New England competition, and all these dancers of all certain kind, ballroom dancers, are together for this great show. And every kind of person you could imagine is at this show. If you've ever seen the sweep of humanity, it's at these shows. Not only in how people look and their age groups, but also especially the dresses that the women are wearing. Ooh. And some of these dresses, these dance dresses, cost $3,000 and $4,000. And there are racks of them in the hallways where people are selling these things. And you look at a dress that has about this much material, and it's $4,000, and you say, and you know, one thing that we hope our parents taught us was dress age appropriate, right? You know what I mean? And there were some dancers there who had been competing for many, many years, and there were half a dozen men and women in their 80s who were really quite the dancer. And so that was wonderful to see. And then, of course, these young kids get out there, as young as 12, and all of us older people are watching them saying, I hate that kid. Look at how supple and how flexible and all these other things. And of course, these kids sometimes learn very difficult dances in half an hour. You know, oh yeah, okay, fine, that's good. I've seen it, now I can do it, you know. I'm still trying to learn some of the basic stuff. But anyway, it made me think about the sermon today because it reminds me of the fact that life is also, besides the great variety, it's also very complicated. And as I think about our young people today, some of you have children on the way up, so to speak, well before college, like the kids who are sitting here this morning. But they're going to have to start making some choices pretty soon about life. And a lot of that's pretty scary to parents and other loved ones. And so I thought about, well, I should use myself as a reference in this sermon. The title of the sermon is Finding a Direction. So I should use myself as one example of how to find a direction. Mostly because I never knew what I was doing when I was young. I graduated from a high school that was 6,500 all boys in Chicago. And it wasn't until my senior year that I realized I should have gone to a school with girls, because I was much more interested in girls. And so anyway, it's 6,500 boys. Now, we had this graduation. There were 1,700 and some students in my graduating class. If you want to know what place I graduated, it was somewhere in the 700s. I don't remember. So it wasn't anywhere near the top. We graduated at night because we were the last class that went to school whenever you were in the right time. So I started school in January, and I graduated in January at the other end. The night of the graduation, big soiree, obviously, at the school. We had a huge assembly hall. Graduation took place. The wind chill factor that night in Chicago was almost 30 below. My father's car didn't start, that kind of thing. A half hour after the graduation, the thought struck me, as powerfully as any thought has ever struck me. The thought struck me, what am I going to do next week? I graduated. What am I going to do? I didn't have a clue. You know, it's interesting, some kids, they've got their old, you ask them, I say, sometimes little kids, 10 years old, I ask them, what are you going to, well, as soon as I graduate from high school, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to study blah, blah, blah. And I'm always just think it's just wonderful. I wonder how much of that is their parents doing, but still, it's wonderful. I didn't have a clue about what I was going to do. My mother and father were very quick to tell me that I was going to get a job because I wasn't going to live at home and not help pay for the expenses. My mother and father were barely making it. And it wasn't really until, when I spent time in the Navy and I worked for Illinois Bell Telephone, some of you heard these stories before, it wasn't until I really decided that the urgings that I had heard in my own spirit about going into the ministry, I had to follow them. It might not be right, but I had to at least give it a chance. And so really, in those early years, the church gave me a lot of direction. And I'm always grateful to God for that. But I'm also grateful for the fact that with that direction that the church gave me, what I didn't accept, which the church was willing to give me, in fact wanted to give me, was dependence on the church or indoctrination. I must have been born with the ecumenical gene. I have never believed that any denomination, or in that matter of fact, any religion, has all the truth. We choose a religion. We choose it for a lot of reasons, because our parents were there, because at a particular time of life that religion responds to us, because there are stories or promises in that religion that resonate in our own hearts.